There's a new remote control out from Evolve. It's the R2. Okay, so if you're familiar with my other videos, you'll know that over a year ago now I picked up this Evolve Carbon GT skateboard and it is fantastic. I'm still loving it. I really should do a follow-up video on how I'm getting on with it still. But Evolve recently released what they call the R2 remote, so I wanted to talk to you about that very briefly and let you know whether I think you should get one or not. For those unfamiliar, this is the remote that came with my Evolve Carbon GT. Now if you order one you will get the R2 remote, but the GT, the Bamboo GT, the GTX, etc., basically the current generation of Evolve skateboards came with this remote, which they call the GT remote. And it's a third generation remote, and basically it's really good. You've got the LCD screen, it shows the battery percentage of the board, obviously the trip, how far you've been trip wise, speedo, etc. You use these two buttons to control what mode you're in, turn it on and off. And this is basically the throttle trigger, so you'd pull it down to accelerate and push forwards to brake. A little bit flimsy, but personally never had any issues with it. But that would be the general complaint from people, that it's quite flimsy. If you kind of knock it, when you've stopped on your jeans or on your side or something, it could initiate the board to make it move. I've only ever had that happen to me once, and you just kind of get used to knowing that that's not what to do. But that was really the main complaint that people had, was there was no Deadman switch like we have on a boosted board. So Evolve have changed some of that with the R2 remote. So this is now a fourth generation remote control. So when you order one of these, it comes in this lovely little box like this, kind of in keeping with Evolve's other packaging design. Inside you get a slightly larger case than you get with the GT remote, and then an R2 operations manual. So I'll take you through very briefly why you may be interested in this. At the time of doing the review, so this is start of January now, if you buy one of these from Evolve right now, they're currently like 50% off. So I paid £50 for this as opposed to the usual £100, which is like an introductory offer. I'm not sure how long the offer lasts, but just thought I'd make you aware. Inside, obviously you get the R2 remote, which we will look at shortly, the little wrist lanyard, a micro USB charging cable, and a little carabiner type clip. So let's put that to one side. So as you can see, the ergonomics of this remote have greatly changed over this third generation. So this now actually feels like it's supposed to sit in your hand. I have seen some mentions from people online. A majority of them have been people in the US that say they don't like this design because it could be misinterpreted as a weapon, so a gun, if you're riding around with this in there. I guess that's true. Living in the UK, don't really have to worry about those sort of things, but maybe it's a consideration that you need to think about if that is an issue in the country that you live. They've changed the material, so now it's like the rubberized plastic on the sides, but the rest of it is a smooth plastic finish. Feels really good. It's slightly lighter than the GT remote, but still feels nice and solid. On the back here is this new Deadman switch. You can turn that on and off, so if you don't need or feel the desire to have a Deadman switch, you can disable that in the settings. The important thing to note actually with the Deadman switch though is once you get to around 5 miles per hour, the Deadman switch disables itself, so you don't need to consistently hold that all the time whilst using the trigger. You can let go of that. This is the accelerator button. this is the brake button. Both of these are using magnetic connectivity, so you get a real nice smooth throttle motion, and that's also changed really how the mapping of the power delivery happens on the board as well. So no longer is it, when you're in GT mode, it tries to eject you from the skateboard. You now can much better feather the throttle and give a much more gradual speed increase. It feels really nice, and actually you feel like you're in a lot more control. And I think now, if I was to let other people ride the board, they wouldn't come off it so easily because they've got more control over it. Obviously now there's two separate buttons. One of the questions people ask is, okay, so now that you have this ability to have better throttle and brake control, what happens if you kind of get flustered and you're holding onto the throttle and then you press the brake? What happens? The good news is the brake button always overrides the throttle, so don't need to worry about that at all. This little button down here with the Evolve logo on is the on-off button, as well as the charging light. So when it's charging, it's red. When it's fully charged, it's green, and when it's on, it's blue. And then these two buttons are kind of like the up and down buttons to change the different modes from, GT, fast, eco and slow. So different to on the old one where you could just continually cycle through. And obviously the navigation within the menus. And on the back here is a little rubberized boot, and that basically hides the micro USB charging socket. So when you first get this board, or this remote, sorry, depending on how old the software is in the controller, so obviously this is using 2.4 gigahertz for the control, depending on what version of software the controller is using and your board, you're either using version 1 or version 2. So if you have a later board, it's probably using version 2, and out the box this is going to pair straight away. If it's an older board like mine, you need to switch it to version 1. So you do this relatively simple. You turn on the remote control, you double click the Evolve button to get access to the menu screen. You push the down button or the secondary button down until you get to the more info screen. Click once with the Evolve button. Then obviously we'll show you the battery information that has no information on it because it's not currently connected to your board. Then the tricky part now is you need to in quick succession double click the Evolve button and double click the top button quickly. This will then give you access to the menu, the motor screen, and in the bottom right hand corner you will see it currently says V2. You then double click the Evolve button again and you see that will switch to V1. Click the Evolve button one more time, will take you back to the home screen. Now you are in V1 mode on the remote. And really the only difference is just the settings and the firmware configuration between the controller and the board. So once you've done that, power off the remote, power on your board, power on the remote again, and then simply tap the top button. You'll then see that your little wireless antenna starts to flash, and within 30 seconds or up to 20 minutes, it really depends, but keep the remote and the board as close together as possible, your board and your remote will pair. Now the first time I did this I had a few issues getting it into version 1, and it took nearly 20 minutes. Basically the remote just sat on my board for it to do the pairing, but once that had happened it's rock solid. Every time I turn it on straight away now, it goes and pairs instantly. The other thing you'll notice is that by default when you turn on the remote, it's in what they call safe mode. So you just press one of the buttons, it will take it out of safe mode, and then it's on, and it will tell you the last mode you're in. So you can see here I was last in fast mode, so that is the mode that it's booting up in. The other kind of things that have changed on the display, now you have a battery indicator for the remote control as well as the skateboard. So you can see at the top, the skateboard represents the skateboard power levels, and then the bottom bar is the power levels for the remote. This is excellent because I always did wonder how much power I had or how much charge I had left in the remote, but I don't like the fact that I now no longer know the percentage of power in my board. It's just this long bar indicator that slowly moves down the board. Now obviously that's not a big deal. I just like knowing that, okay, I've got 50% left, so when I went out for a ride, when it got to like 20, I could consider, you know, heading back. So not the end of the world, but it really does work very well. So as you see here, without the Deadman switch pressed, doing anything does nothing. Hold down the Deadman switch, and now we can get going. As you see, as long as the wheels are still moving, I don't need to press the Deadman switch again. If you hold it on, so I keep this held on and I press the brakes, and the throttle now goes back into Deadman switch mode. I need to accelerate again because the board came to a complete stop. That's the safe mode I was telling you guys about. So I think that pretty much covers the changes. As far as I've been riding it, it works really well. I have no issues or real complaints. The progressiveness of the throttle is fantastic. I'm really happy that they've changed how that works. You feel like you have a lot more control over the board, and you don't have to be bombing around in GT mode. You can pretty much leave it in GT mode and have real progressive acceleration. So for me, it feels fantastic. So yeah, if you're interested in changing remote, it's definitely worth checking out this R2 remote from Evolve. And if you're looking for that Deadman switch, and that's one of the things that put you off getting a product from Evolve, then now your answer is solved. I still think that obviously these boards are expensive, all of them are, but I still think that Evolve are one of the best electric skateboards on the market, and they have resellers in most countries, so warranties and support isn't a problem, unlike with Boost and some of the others. So just before I end the video, I remember there was two things I forgot to mention in this review that I think's important to make you aware of. The first one is there's now also like a vibration mechanism in the remote. So when you're powering it on or changing modes, there's a tactile feedback, a slight vibration, a slight buzz, to let you know that the mode has changed. And that also relates to if there are any sync issues when on the board. So if connectivity is lost, it will fall back into safe mode. So again, you're not going to accidentally hit something and fly off. So obviously you just need to reactivate. And then the second one is something that I only discovered obviously when starting to use this remote, but apparently it was changed a while ago. So depending on the version you have, this may not be news to you. There's no longer a reverse function. So on my old GT remote, I can tap the button, go into reverse, and then back up, and then move forward again. I found that function really helpful sometimes when maneuvering on paths and things. But apparently a few firmware updates ago for the boards, they removed that functionality already. So not the end of the world. I did use it, but I think in general not many people in the Evolve community did, so it kind of makes sense that they've removed it. But I guess a bit like the Deadman switch, it'd be nice if they had the option to enable or disable those things depending on your use cases. But there we go. Still really recommend the new R2 remote if you have an Evolve product.
Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.